All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm waking up here, drinking some coffee. It's a sunny day, in contrast to yesterday, which was quite foggy, very London-esque. Um, Now, I want to talk a little more about some historical context. So we did a little bit of a deep dive into aspects of Romanticism, and we talked about that particular age and time period and how it relates to the art that's being created. And the Industrial Revolution played heavily into that. And we discussed that at length, and some of you are writing about it right now in the essays. So, carrying forward, though, into the Victorian age, named after Queen Victoria, born in 1819, lived all the way to 1901. That's a pretty long life for back in those days. Um, but this was when much of um, the 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 developments and the innovations that were taking place earlier in the 1800s, all of this started to expand in a profound way. And the Industrial Revolution sort of hits at full stride, and we really begin to see um, the effects of that. And so the first work that we're going to read from this time period is something by a playwright and novelist. I think he did write some poetry, and social critic. His name is Oscar Wilde. I'm sure you've heard of him, or at least heard that name. Um, so his play, The Importance of Being Earnest, is a comedy. There's a certain kind of comedy that um, doesn't really hold back in its criticism of the era. And so we're going to look at that coming up next. So, what was going on in the 1890s? Well, many of you, none of you, I don't think, were alive when we went from the end of the 1900s into the 2000s. But I will tell you, being a sort of, I just graduated from college. There was a lot of angst about the turn of the century, um, especially the turn of the millennium. Um, if you remember Y2K or heard of Y2K, this theory that computers were going to not be able to process the shift from, like, we hadn't calculated how the dates were going to turn into the new millennium, and that all computers were going to go haywire and shut down. It was going to be this big crash. It didn't turn out to happen, but there was certainly a lot of fear around that. It was kind of interesting. Most people kind of half believed it. Some people were really concerned about it. But I just offer that as an explanation to, you know, what might have happened the 100 years before that, which some people may have panicked a little bit, thinking, "Oh, could there be an end of the world happening?" That was partially an expression, or mostly to do with an expression of a fear about how rapidly things were changing, and they still continue to change quite rapidly. In my lifetime, certainly things have changed. Like, I didn't have the internet um, until after college, and that's been a profound shift in the way that my brain works, the way that I study, and the person that I am. Similar things were happening as rapidly back then, believe it or not. So, yeah, Queen Victoria, this big long life, it was a period of immense prosperity for the empire and for those aristocrats who were able to profit from the empire, and also industrialists who were clever enough to um, learn how to make money off of certain enterprises like factories and harnessing steam engine power. So I'm paraphrasing a little bit from an article that I will share with you by this scholar named Beckson, who talks about sort of what was the spirit of the age like in the late 1800s, approaching the turn of the century. So, um, like I said before, there was a sort of a fear of the end of the world, or a fear of this what's coming. Things are changing rapidly, and so you had artists that considered what is this new age we're headed to, and is there a possibility of a renewal or a rebirth, or are we in amidst that process? Um, Oscar Wilde, I don't know if he was that optimistic, but certainly some other artists were, similar to perhaps Shelley in the end of the Ode to the West Wind. But this guy here, William Butler Yeats, was a poet of the time period, um, and we're going to look at him eventually. He did have a theory of the cycles of civilization, and that there were certain endpoints and new rebirth points throughout civilization, that you can kind of see that civilization is on this cyclical path. We'll look at that coming up. So, a very important time period, though, because of all the changes going on. There's going to be a shift in power, the boom of technology, and let's go a little bit more into what were some of these massive innovations. Well, you had faster railroads. You had this might be akin to the internet in a way. With faster railroads, there's more connectivity across wide spaces and countries. Steamships, same thing. So I think this all sort of leads us on that road down to what the internet actually is. And now it's, imagine having, it would be impossible to have class with a student in South Korea right now, but we're doing that, other continents as well. Um, you would take months to just send a simple letter um, back in the old days. And actually, that was pretty fast if you could send a letter on a steamship. Um, okay. The photography that we're doing, like me filming this video, is ridiculous. I never thought I'd be able to do something like this so easily. But a photograph, um, that was a huge invention, and it fundamentally altered the way that we interact with reality. Very profound. You can't even, it's really hard to consume anything these days. I mean, we do read books that don't have a lot of images or photographs, but just, if you're reading things online, you're constantly being bombarded with imagery and photographs, or the like, digital renderings and stuff like that. So you see a little seed of what we live in now emerging here. And then, of course, electricity and electrical lighting. In a way, there was a positive. When you think about the horrors of, burning fuel to create the electricity, and maybe it's caused some horrific effects on the environment. What did they use beforehand? Fun fact: does anybody know? They used whale oil to light candles, and while we are not going to be able to go into a deep dive into whaling, whaling was the blubber from the whales was so rich with oil and fats that they were chasing whales around the globe for their blubber. I mean, it was a tremendous resource, and a lot of it went towards lighting lamps and lanterns, and it's very interesting to think about that profound shift from from a reliance on oils and whale oil, and then electricity, then would replace all of this. Um, let's see. Let's look a couple of more advances that are happening. Um, okay. All of the study, the boom and awareness around electricity. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, that I was going to say all the scientific revolution, and then the Enlightenment era, the Industrial Revolution. The, our understanding of chemistry begins to um, really change and become much more modern. Um, Optics had a lot to do with that. And I guess there was just a matter of time before the electron was discovered. The model for the atom that we currently use, where there's a nucleus and protons and neutrons, electrons, an understanding of that. The periodic table then emerged. Genetics in 1900, Gregor Mendel's work in genetics. If you've taken any biology course, you know about his work with beans, I believe. And a little more esoteric here, but quanta of energy and light absorption and emission, and this sort of low-level understanding of radiation, and then Einstein in 1905 comes around, and while Newton's laws still hold true, the theories behind them become a little more shifty in that they're not as fixed as we thought that they were. The universe is not a sort of mechanism like a clock that you can, you're guaranteed things are going to behave certain ways. Well, it comes when what Einstein proposes is that things that we think are fixed variables like time, space, gravity, motion, all of this can start to bend around a little bit, and the theory of relativity goes into that. So time is not necessarily a constant. Time can be bent, shaped, and this is very profound stuff, and it suggests that the universe is not necessarily what we thought it was. So it's sort of like the deeper you go into things, the more questions you answer, and then the more questions arise. And that's exactly what happened with this shift from Newtonian physics, which was wonderful and helped develop so much technology. But then along comes Einstein, and we learn that the building blocks of matter are very different than we kind of thought they were going to be. So much so that you can even convert mass into energy, and maybe vice versa, in the idea of nuclear fission. And we know where that took us, the creation of atomic weapons. Right. So I'm going to pause here, and well, I'm going to one more slide here. So let's talk a little bit about the anxiety that sort of is perpetuated by all of this rapid change. Well, one cause for the anxiety is, like I was saying, this shift in worldview. So you have Darwin's Origin of Species, for example. In essence, I wouldn't say it's. I don't know how much it proved at the time, but certainly studies proved Darwin to be pretty correct in his idea of the evolution of species and natural selection. And this flew in the face of a lot of traditional beliefs. And perhaps created a crisis for many people of the Western Christian mindset. And then comes a deeper understanding of the history of the planet. And if you read this quote really carefully, it's very well written, but it's a little bit of a riddle in a way. You have to, because we don't speak with this same sort of flourish. The earth must have been, and within a finite period of time to come, the earth must again be unfit for habitation of man. So he is saying that there was a time, a long period of time, where there was no human inhabitants on the earth. And so when you look at our timeline, you went all this length of time without any human species. And then all of a sudden, you get the emergence of humans here, and then the timeline stops. So it's like the majority of the existence of the planet did not have humans on it. So they're sort of recognizing this and pondering the significance of that. If there was a time when humans did not exist, probably there is a time when humans will cease existing. When will that be? Things are changing so much. Perhaps that might be sooner than later. I will say it is a frightening thought, but almost every significant age throughout the history of mankind has been concerned about the survival of the species. So while there might be some legitimate concerns, especially these days, about how much time is left on the planet, it is something we've been afraid of forever. So that's how delicate life actually is. I think we sense our own vulnerability here on the planet. And perhaps this is one of the science fiction genre of you see a little science fiction emerging before and during this time period, and the famous work The Time Machine is one of these. It's a little bit comical, but this guy goes to the future, and the world is ruled by cannibalism and giant crabs. Pretty fun, actually, if you're into sci-fi stuff. It's, again, representative of some of the angst, the fears, the concerns, and the wonders of, like, where are we headed? What is going to be? What will the world look like in just another 50, 100 years from now? So that is all up in the air and the subject of lots of intense curiosity and conversation, and it infiltrates the art and the things that we're going to read that come from the Victorian era. So I'm going to pause this video for now, and part 2 will come next.